Yar, you mateys! I wonder how they wanted you to acquire this game. Next on Atari ST Show. Hello everyone, and welcome to another Atari ST Show. I'm your good buddy, your good pal, and Atari enthusiast, Amigo Aaron, joined by a man who would love Atari, literally injected into his veins. I give you the BRENT.
That's me.
You do love the Atari, don't you? All Ataris. I mean, Atari in general.
Oh, yes, yeah. I mean, not what they've become now, but...
Well, I mean, they're doing better, though. I mean, modern Atari is way better than, like, not-so-modern Atari was. Remember the Atari Hotel, the Atari Cryptocurrency, Atari the Flamethrower?
From about 1995 to 2015, it was rough sailing.
Yeah. You know, I want to go back, since the topic of this week's show is pirates, ! I want to talk about the ancient art of piracy. And I don't mean on the high seas. I mean in your underpants, in your room back when you were 15, when you were pirating
15?
stuff. Believe it or not, yeah. Underpants had been invented. You know, a lot of people, I've made it pretty well known that I was a dirty, rotten, stinky, filthy pirate from back in the day.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say I was above most pirates in terms of the amount of stuff I pirated and the amount of throughput I had.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Because you didn't sell.
Well, I didn't sell.
That makes you the scumbag type of pirate.
I'm more like a Robin Hood type pirate. That's the way I look at it, except for the giving to the poor. So I was, you know, back in the day when piracy was a thing, do you remember back when we used to pirate stuff back on the Coco?
Yeah.
And
it was a family affair.
I was talking to Rob Flacco here this week. It got me to thinking about this topic. Because we were talking about that back in the day, you really had two possibilities, right? Because you're a kid, you got no income.
Right.
You could say, Dad, I want to buy the Pirates, the game. Now, granted, I would have been in high school when this came out. But you know what I mean. Let's say, Dad, I want to buy Blue Max or something like that for the Atari. Or, Dad, will you buy me 100 blanks floppy discs and make me a hole puncher? Give me a hole puncher, and which is what we would do. We would go through and we had a little cardboard gimmick.
Yep.
We'd punch the floppy disks, and we'd go through and pirate. And for the amount of one game, you could pirate 50 games quite easily. And at the time, I didn't think much of it. Now, I know this is the thing I want to get your input on.
All right.
Of course, we grew up, initially, we had the TRC color computer for pretty much my entire childhood.
Yep.
And pretty much most of yours, we had that until we switched over to the Tandy. Did you even know what we were doing, and did you know it was wrong?
Yes.
You did know?
Oh, no, I knew what we were doing.
Right.
I mean, because, and I've told this story before, I felt like a big hacker when we would get a pirated game, and I would go in there and list the code in BASIC and change the pirated name to my name.
Yeah.
I'd be like, aha, now I'm the cool guy.
But you knew that what we were doing was wrong?
I didn't say I knew what we were doing was wrong. I said I understood what we were doing.
Because the funny thing about growing up with a Coco was there was a very limited amount of purchasable software available locally.
I will say this. I never remember seeing a Coco game on the shelf. I just knew I had a lot of them at home.
Well, most of the time at Radio Shack, they would have a pittance of games. I remember early days, they would have just the baggies with a tape in it, and it did have a title card. And Coco also had those generic cartridge boxes that would just have the name sticking out. Look, they're real generic. We used them as the background on the Coco show. But I didn't think much of it at the time. And I remember the time that it really dawned on me that we were really doing something wrong was the first time I flipped through a copy of Rainbow, and I saw all the games in it, and they all had prices beside them. And I was like, holy smokes, look at all this stuff. That's when it sort of hit me. And then, of course, that didn't stop me. In fact, it gave me ideas for other stuff I wanted to pirate. But that was the earliest time that I thought to myself, hey, this might be wrong. So I think a lot of people like me went into this like would not exactly know what piracy was.
Well, Here's the thing, though, because that makes Dad look really bad.
I don't think Dad knew either, to be honest.
That's possible. But I know for me, getting new software was a social affair that I enjoyed because it was usually a party where I got to go over to someone's house and play a bunch of games.
See, that's way different than how we used to get them. Because when me and Dad first got into it, before we even had a Coco, a guy had already copied us a zillion floppy disks. What? And it was just one guy at work. There was no party. It was not fun.
Oh, no. Well, see, I remember going over to the dude's house and sitting in the basement with him and Dad and a couple other people, and they just set me down in front of the game and asked me if I played it for 1 or 2 minutes, asked me if I liked it, and then that game magically appeared.
I don't ever remember any of that. I don't. That never happened with me. The first time I actually was socially swapped games was, it's funny, this came up this week too. Harley mentioned it. We had a copy party at a local food chain. Long John Silver's, ironically. That's what made it better. At the mall, we all went in there with our computers and went in there and had a little copy fest. That's the first one I went to. But so really, most of the piracy was done mano a mano for me. It wasn't like I went to big parties for it.
Now, Aaron, was there a time when you're like, all right, piracy bad, I shouldn't do it anymore?
No, not really. Unfortunately, not even today. Right? But we were talking about how little I pirate now, probably practically nothing, because now everything's cheap and they give it away.
Something I want to note. By pirating, I don't mean downloading old,
No, I don't count that as even piracy.
No, I don't either.
Let's say if
you can't go and get it in a store.
Yeah.
And even if I'm not talking about, it's sold out, I guess I'll pirate it. I'm talking about it's no longer stocked.
Yeah.
I think if you actively seek out to take something that you could get through other legal means, that's piracy.
Oh, I've pirated more last year than I've ever pirated in my life, but it's different. All right, I'm gonna explain. Okay, so I saw a video about this hard drive you could get off Amazon that was like it was built in. It was in a built-in emulation setup. You know, I was like, okay, I'm gonna buy it. It was a good deal. I bought it. Well, it was, but it had like every modern every modern PC and every modern Dreamcast and PS3. It had all kinds of modern stuff on it.
Well, PS3 you couldn't go into a store.
Well, because it also had tons of PC. It was Pirate City, okay? And then I downloaded that huge image. Remember that image I got? It was like a 4 terabyte image I downloaded. It was like a super emulation. I did a video on it. Between those two things, they contain more pirated stuff than I've ever pirated in my whole life.
But those don't fit my criteria.
What do you mean, modern games that you can go out and buy right now don't meet your criteria?
Well, no,
GTA 5 was on there, for God's sakes. GTA 5.
Well, okay,
How are they selling this on Amazon?
Illegally.
Oh, yeah. So,
see, when I left college and I had enough disposable income to purchase my own stuff, I stopped pirating games.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because also, I'll take it one step further.
All right.
There are games that I have purchased and had no intent on playing at all because I wanted to support the developers.
You're a sweet, kind man. I support developers a little bit. JOTD, I bought a bunch of his stuff on itch.io. I like itch.io. It's a good deal. Set a sucker up, that can't sell their games. So the one thing about piracy, and we'll close with this before we move on to the game. We've come to the point now where people are remaking classic games like for the Amiga, for the Atari, some other stuff, and they can't sell them legally, and so you have to just sort of give them money for doing the job.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. That's a gray area as well. But yeah, I've left my pirating days for software behind me.
Yeah. Everyone says that, but then they've got multiple copies of Windows sitting around. Or they went and bought Windows for like $1, and they're like, it's legit.
No, I didn't eBay a key of Windows.
I bet if I went through your house, I'd find a bunch of pirated stuff. Don't act like you're better than everybody else.
I guarantee you would not.
Oh yeah, trust me, I'd plant some stuff.
Because I bought Windows 7 when I worked at Dow.
Yeah.
And that's the Windows key I use today.
What is that key? You want to share it with everybody?
I know the digits of my Windows install.
Let's get
Give
to
me a
it.
break.
Beautiful. The love theme from Pirates, the Brent.
Is that the love theme for Pirates?
The ST
All right,
version
fair
of
enough.
Pirates. Now, it's funny, and for full disclosure, the Brent,
Yes.
me and the boat covered Pirates on the Amiga. Gosh, it
I
was
should have
like...
went back and watched that
I
before
did.
this. Oh,
and I
okay.
talked to Boat about it because we didn't talk about Pirates all that much on the episode about Pirates, but we did talk about the Defender of the Crown box set. That was back in, that was episode 89. You know, we had a loose format back in those days, and that really has not changed a bit. So this is my first go-around with Pirates on the Atari ST. Now, I got to tell you, you know, a lot of times the ST and the Amiga, so it's like a straight port, brother. Not this. This is really, I mean, and not graphically anyway. It's a lot different looking than the Amiga version. So this is Pirates with an exclamation point. Sid Meier's Pirates,
Sid
if you want to be
Pirates, if you wanna-
totally
yeah.
into it. This released back in the day, if you wanted to buy this for your ST, 24 pound, 95p. This will set you back. And this was released in 89. Now get this. This game has a lineage that won't quit when it comes to releases.
You aren't kidding.
So, I believe the lead version, this was on the C64. I'm pretty sure, well, almost 100% sure on that. So, and it came out in 87 along with the Amstrad CPC and the PC Booter version. I urge you to check out the PC Booter version if you want to have a good laugh. In 88, you had your Apple II, your Apple II GS, your Mac. That was the year of Apple, apparently. And in 89, you had the ST, the PC98, the PC88. In 90, you got the Amiga. So Amiga, really, their version came in late. And then in 91, you got the NES version. Have you ever played this on the
I
NES?
have not played the NES version.
And in 94, this came out from DOS. I want to thank our good buddies over at Moby for giving me that list of the
I
game
will
releases.
say, I did take a peek at this on DOS.
Yeah.
And you can play it with CGA graphics.
Oh, yeah. Or the Booter version, you don't have much of a choice.
Don't do that, folks.
It'll boot you. You know, Booter games, that right there, someone should do a show and play nothing but Booter games, and we'll see how long that show lasts. Because you don't want to jump off a cliff. Thankfully, the Atari ST version are much better than any of the DOS
Yes.
ports. The developer of this, MPS Labs, that was Microprose's in-house developer. They did such luminary titles as the F-15 Strike Eagle series, the F-19, M1 Tank, a Railroad Tycoon, Red Storm Rising, and Secret Service 2. They would get some good games for the Atari. Those are all Atari releases. This was published by Microprose, of course, who published all the games I just mentioned, along with Gunship, Secret Service, Special Forces. Kennedy Approach is a game I heard about. I didn't know that was them. And, of course, Civilization, a great game. This controls the mouse and is a one-player game. Their programmers on this, Russell Finn, who helped convert this over, he worked on Gunship and Red Storm Rising, a fellow named Stephen Borer, and a fellow named Ken Veal. This is the only credit I could find for them on the Atari. The graphics, Michael O'Hare, who worked on this and nothing else as far as I could tell, and Max Remington, same thing. Of course, the game was designed, we got to mention this guy. I doubt he touched the Atari ST, but he did design the game. Sid Meier, Civilization, F-15, F-19, Road Tycoon, a lot of stuff we just mentioned, the Red Storm Rising, Silent Service. He's all man, basically. And the funny thing is, I'll get into this. There's a little story about how his name got on this, because this is the first game where they put a sucker's name in front of the game name. There's a story behind it. The music was done by Ken Legacy, who worked on pretty much everything I've mentioned, and he also worked on Airborne Ranger and M1. And the other musical helper was Jim McConkey, who worked on Silent Service 2 and Railroad Tycoon. So, and I've played 20 of how many of those I've actually played. Before we get into the game proper, I just want to give a little intro, because I don't think you know this, and I think you might be amused by it.
Okay.
So, they were trying to decide what game to do after the F-15 Strike Eagle and Silent Service. They had two big games. So Sid Meier took a vacation, along with a couple other people and his new girlfriend. They went to the Caribbean. And while he was there, he got into pirate crap. All right? But who wouldn't? you know. And so he thought it'd be cool to do a pirate game. So when he got back, it's funny, another designer, Arnold Hendrick, was working on a pirate type game, but it would have been more like a ship-to-ship combat game in the style of an Avalon Hill strategic warfare type game.
Sure.
Okay. And so they didn't do it. They said, heck with this, we're not going down that road. And so Pirates got put on the back burner, and eventually they started working on Pirates while they were working on other games. Okay. And so the C64 version of it only had a couple people on it, and early on, including Sid Meier. So, and eventually they ironed out what they wanted and they fired it up. But here's the amusing part of this. Now this is according to one of the developers there. So apparently there were a bunch of people at a dinner, and one of the people at the dinner was Robin Williams, you know, the comedian. Okay, and so they were at a Software Publishers Association meeting. I'd love to. I can't verify this is a true story, but I've read it. It's all over the place. All right. So Robin Williams was there, and he was, you know, they were yucking it up, and he was like, he's like, why don't they have why don't you guys have your names on the boxes like say a musical artist does? And they're like, we don't know. And Robin Williams said, listen, you should put his name on the box. Sid Meier, put his name up there. You should put Sid names on a couple of these and promote him like he's a big deal. That's what they said. Robin Williams, that's the story. And lo, it came to pass. That's what they did.
Well,
so this was
to be honest, it was a good idea.
This was that you could take this story with a grain of salt, but that's how the deal went down. And Sid Meier ended up being on the box of this. It worked pretty well because the Pirates sold, as you can imagine. You heard me name off all the versions they made. It did very, very well. All their other stuff. This is when Microprose was on fire, like they could do no wrong. So, the game proper. This casts you in the role of a titular pirate as you go through a real open world. I would call it open world pirate simulator, sorta.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of historically based, but it's not necessarily because you're there.
Right.
Doing crap.
Well, but you can play as famous pirates.
You can play it. You can pick your time period,
Yep.
and you can play as famous pirates. It gives you a lot of options at the beginning. Did you explore any of the different time periods on there?
No, I mean, I picked them, but never saw a real difference. I mean, I'm sure there's differences in.
Well, the difference is it's when you start.
Right.
It's like
who's the ruling class and who you've got to fear and all that good stuff. But I never wanted to be the historic pirates either. I always wanted to be my own guy.
So you can choose to start in 1560, right? Or you could start all the way up from 1560, including 1600, 1620, 1640, all the way up to 1660. And the effect of this is, as you go through the game, real world historical alliances and wars or whatnot are sort of going on, and you'll know about these. And these affect who will like you, who will not like you, where you can and can't go. And these are fluid, so that will change as you go through the game quite a bit, actually. And this could cause much hilarity when you're cruising into a port, for example, or you attack the wrong ship. We'll get into that. So you start the game, and the first thing you do is you pick your time period, or just the generic one. You pick your difficulty, and then you get yourself set up with a name.
Well, we need
Get into it.
Hold up.
Get into it.
This has the longest sequence of you need to pick this before you can play that I've ever seen in any game ever. Pick your pirate, or do you want to be yourself? Well, you want to be yourself? Okay, pick your name. Okay, pick your era.
Yeah.
Okay, era picked. Okay, pick your country that you're going to support.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that.
All right, I picked that. And now it's like, okay, now we're going to play the game.
And it's not like 2 countries either.
Right.
It's like six, I think, or 5 or 6 countries. It's a lot.
And then, of course, directly after you've done all that is the copy protection.
Yeah, which thankfully you can skip. And then you have to fight. Don't forget about that. You have to have a sword fight. Oh, you also get to pick your speciality. Don't forget that.
That's the other one.
And then you have a sword fight.
And I always picked fencing.
See, I never picked it, not once. As
Yeah.
I learned from the Amiga version, I picked the cannoneering. That was my thing. And I was King Dong of ship-to-ship combat. I mean, I can tell you that right now.
So after you pick all of that and you do the copy protection, I mean it's the dialogue boxes just keep popping up on each other like spam ads on a web browser.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like.
And then
they do cover one another.
Then you're finally like, okay, here I go, and boom, you're instantly in a fight. And if you lose that fight, which I did many, many, many times until I figured out what was going on, it's like, okay, you have to make a decision. You can either quit, or you can start the game at a harder difficulty. And I was like, well, I guess I'll quit. And it boots you not back to the fight, all the way out, where you get to listen to the lovely theme again, which is a lovely theme.
Yeah, it's not that lovely.
And then you get to go through all your options again.
Yeah.
So,
this game, I want to talk about, before we get into the gameplay proper, let's talk about the look of this game. I mentioned I'd played this on the Amiga, and I went back to give it another whirl this week to see how they compared.
Sure.
It's funny, this game to me, and time-wise it does as well, this game to me looks like it falls somewhere between the C64 and the Amiga in terms of graphics. Like, I'd say graphically, this version has more in common with the C64 version than it does the Amiga version. I mean, the Amiga version looks a lot different. It's a lot more refined than this looking-wise. And I also found that the Amiga version played a lot faster than this. It wasn't like the Amiga version. I mean, trust me, both games are slow. When you're in the middle of the ocean and you're fighting the wind, you can see it takes forever. but I mean, the Amiga version seemed to run a little bit. Now, with all that said, I was far more effective on the ST version than I ever was on the Amiga version. I had a lot more fun because I had a better time at doing things. So maybe being a little slower actually helped me out a little bit. You hadn't played the Amiga version. How did you think of this thing graphically? And I mean, you understand what I'm saying? Because even like the fonts and stuff they use, they're almost C64-ish in the way they're presented.
I really didn't have a problem with the graphics, maybe because I didn't have anything to compare it to.
Yeah.
Except, like I said, I did look at the DOS CGA version.
Well, I mean, it looks better than that.
that was rough looking. But I do have a question. During ship battles on the Amiga, does the screen scroll? Or
no,
do
it
you
flips.
seal?
It flips.
Okay.
Yeah, it flips.
That is, in my opinion, the worst part of the game.
Well, I don't think there's a version where it scrolls. I mean, not that I've seen. I think it flips screens on every one.
That's unfortunate because it is hard. I mean, even through navigation, not just fighting, it is hard to get into a good rhythm where you think, well, okay, I'm gonna sail up for a while, and then the screen kind of clicks down because it doesn't just you get to the edge and it flips to the new screen. You get close-ish to the edge, and then it kind of scrolls down several lines.
It's not a big deal until you're fighting. Then it's annoying.
Or you're trying to get somewhere, even if you don't know where that place is.
Yeah.
And you're scrolling, and you're just kind of zoned out, and land hits up.
Oh yeah, but I never had
it.
that trouble. I never had a problem with that. Now, by the way, this comes with a map. I'm guessing you didn't use a map.
No.
But I mean, I did refer to a map. That makes it helps. Let's break the game down. As a pirate, you have certain things you can do. All right. And some things you can be on land or on water. Okay, that's step one. When you're on water, you can basically sail around, and given the wind direction and possibly the currents, it will because there are some currenty like areas on the screen that will affect how quickly you can move your ship around. Plus, we've got your sails up, which you never really take them down unless you're in battle. And you'll zoom around, and so when you're completely not in combat, you're just at sea, you can bring up a menu that will let you get your bearings. This little a thing that measures the sun. I had no idea how to use that, but you can do it. You can also check on your crew, see how happy they are, check on your supplies, stuff like that. And you can also get a list of the cities. Doesn't tell you where they're at. You can tell who likes what. And then occasionally you'll be out there flying around your boat, and a guy will be like, "Hey, sail ho! There's a ship over there. What do you want to do?" So you can ignore the ship, keep going, or you can investigate. Now, Investigate doesn't mean you're in combat. It'll say, okay, it looks like they're flying the colors of France. Okay, well, then you have to make a decision. Do I like France, number one, in the game? Number two, do I not know or not care and I need information from this boat? Or number three, do I want to sink the crap out of it? You can be nice, you can be nice, you can be not nice, or you can just leave. Once you decide to be not, if you ask for information, they just tell you, they give you a list of what's happened in the past X amount of months.
Yeah, it's basically just a
it's
history
like
thing.
France is at war with England, and the Dutch are at war with. If you go to war, then you're into the ship-to-ship combat aspect of the game, which is a big part of the game. So this game, you're driving around a pirate ship. So what you want to do is you want your sides, your ship of your starboard and the other side, you want them to be against the other guy's ship firing, but when he's firing, you want to be straight on.
Yeah,
to give him less of a target.
Yeah.
And so how do you do this? Well, you move the mouse around, you drag it around.
Gently.
You drag the mouse around to steer your ship. It's not hard to understand.
No.
The ships don't turn on the dime,
No.
so sometimes you'll get tied up a little bit, but you can do it. If you you could. I was the king. Like I said, I always took cannoneering. I was the master of. I never lost a sea battle, not one time. Now I lost when I was attacking forts, but that's different. But at sea, sometimes they'd get away, but usually I'd crush them. And if you pound the ship enough, you get at the bottom of the screen. It'll tell you how many guns they've got, how many men they've got, and it'll tell you if there's anything damaged on the ship, and it'll also tell you if their guns are loaded or not.
Right.
Because every time you shoot a volley of cannonballs over, you got to reload the cannons, and so does he. Right. So you can sort of, if you kind of want, when he's reloading, you either want to be shooting or getting yourself straight on with him so he can't shoot you. And when he's screwing around, that's when you can start bombarding him, bombardment. And so it's all about maneuvering, and it's also about how much guts you've got, how many cannons. Like I always kept a ton of cannons. So I was always ready to rock and roll.
Did you always just shoot them till you sank them?
No, because every once in a while I accidentally run into them. Now, if you purposely or accidentally run into the enemy, cannons are over. Then it's time for you to go one-on-one with the sword fighting. Now, I wasn't as confident with the sword fighting as I was with the cannons, but I can tell you I never lost a sword fight on the Atari version.
I was
the master.
very confident with my sword fighting. Confident I was bad.
Oh, so sword fighting, and the reason I was good at this is because I'd played it before. Sword fighting is you're using a mouse, so it's unique. You have your guy and the enemy will be your side views on the screen with their whatever you choose. You get to pick the weapon you want, and then you've got a little arrows will appear around your sword. It'll be an up arrow, diagonal forward, diagonal down, or down. This is what you're doing with your sword.
Yeah.
So that's where you're going to swing.
Blocks and swings.
And so he's going to attempt to hit you in places you can't defend and vice versa. I played on the lowest level until eventually I went up. I moved up. But early on, it was I was crushing these guys. You could just pound them down with your sword. And eventually, if you pound them down enough, they get down on their knees like the Nates. They're like, oh no, they're begging off. And that means you've won the day.
Yeah. And
that means you can loot the ship. You can do depending on who you capture, which we'll get into in a second. And then you can even keep the ship, or you can sink the ship and just take the crap off it. If you keep it, you got to send a couple of your hired goons over.
Like half.
Well, it depends. I didn't send that many. You have to give them some food though, and then you drive off. And occasionally you're going to come across a ship that's not flying a country's flag. They're flying the old skull and crossbones, a pirate. Now, there's no honor among thieves. Don't think for a second these guys won't come after you. So you go after them was my motto. And then when you capture their guy, you can get information out of him, or you could get a ransom out of it, which I always ransom because I want the money. That's pretty much ship to ship. What did you think of ship to ship?
It's surprisingly good given the controls.
And I got really good at the sword play. I have to say, at the boating. And sword play was pretty good, but the boating, I was on fire.
I never felt confident with either, but I could tell I was getting better. With ship-to-ship combat, the only thing that really bothered me is you're shooting with 6, 8, 10 guns, right?
Yeah, or more.
And they're shooting with like 4. And
Well, it depends.
Well, right. They have an amount as well. And I always felt like when they hit me, they did more damage. Now, I didn't play on the lowest level. I played the one above that, I think Journeyman.
I went up 3 levels during the gameplay, so I went from all the way to the bottom to the middle.
And I always felt like they were doing more damage with less guns. Now, it could have been because I was doing something wrong. I'll fully admit that.
It was. You weren't, because, yes, they will do that if you don't. You've got to get your ship in position to take those volleys.
I know. I mean, but overall, I felt like I was improving, because the first time I just ran out there and I was just like, this sucks, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And also, if a ship gets the wind and it's going to run, don't chase it. If you can see that the ship is just trying to get away, and if you haven't gotten any shots off on it, you'll never catch it.
Well, sometimes you're right, but sometimes if you put your sails up and you've damaged them enough, you can catch them. I've ran down ships a bunch of times.
I had ships that I would engage with them. They would immediately start fleeing, and I would chase them for like 10 screens, and I'd be like, all right, screw this. And you just veer off.
Eventually it just ends. But also, it depends on how laden the ship is you're following. It's not that when they're real light, it's not even worth messing with them. So,
but it's good.
Yeah.
Now, one other aspect we need to mention is the fort combat.
I was getting ready to get to it.
I never did
cities.
well.
Well, so when you engage with a fort or a city, it's their cannons against your cannons. Well, and you're at sea. And so their cannons have pretty good range. And the thing is, you have to basically do loops in the harbor. Yeah. And depending on which, like, this happened, very rarely did I run aground, but this is one of the times this happened. I ran aground because I was trying to blow through a city. They had a ton of cannons, and they're hard to hit, and they're very good at aiming.
And they hit hard.
Well, it's because the maneuverability is limited. So when you go and attack a fort, especially a fort, but when you go and attack a fort or a town, you better really be laden with men and cannons by the bushel. I very rarely did it, if I'm honest. But I mean, it's fun if you pull it off, you're king dong. And occasionally, sometimes you'll jump like a city, and there won't be a if you sneak in, for example, like that, or the cities. Some cities are inland, so you have to send your crew in. You can actually just have a sword fight to capture the city, which is a lot easier if you're good enough with a sword. I've never lost. So that's pretty much, I think that's everything that happens on the water.
Yes.
So let's talk about the other aspects. Now, you could come into ports, but before we get to that part, you can go anywhere on land with your boat, and then you send men onto the land.
Yeah.
Some cities and towns are inland. They don't have a port. And you can send guys in, and once you get there, it's pretty much you do the same stuff you would normally do in a town.
Yes.
One of the things that's great is that you could also, this is another reason to use your guys. You could also, I think you could find water and food, but I never did that. But one thing I did do was I had at one of the taverns, a guy sold me a treasure map. Now the treasure map had a plot of land. It's a picture of the exact graphics of a land, and it's got a box, like a point box, dig here. And it's the first time I've ever done this since I've been playing the game, but I went to that point, sending my boys, and sure enough, they dug up that treasure. It was a big one. So you could go dig for actual buried treasure, and you could find it. I got lucky. Sometimes the maps are incomplete, so you sort of have to guess, but this was a complete map. And I just happened to be at the coast where it was at.
I never wasted money on the maps. Although, I mean, it sounds like it might have
Well,
been
I had a lot of money. So
there you go.
Then you go to a town or city or a place that has a port. So first, you've got to decide how you want to enter the area. You can go in and just park your boat, or you can sneak in if you're not welcome there, and the guards will attack you, or you can just attack them. If you go in normally, and that means they're not going to attack you on sight, which is good. And then you've got certain options. You go to the tavern. At the tavern, you can get information. You can occasionally buy something weird. You can get guys. That's where you get guys that come on board. Get them liquored up. You can also go to a merchant where you play the goods game. Now, I'll tell you about the goods game. The only thing I ever bought from the merchant was food. And occasionally, if they had it, I'd buy cannons, but I never hardly found any place that was selling cannons, because I'll get the rest of my stuff out on the open sea, if you know what I mean. And then you could also, there's a couple places that you can buy tobacco, but most of the time it's just goods.
Yeah.
That's what you're getting.
Sugar was the main
Sugar,
crop.
yeah. Sure, tobacco, sugar. There was, I think, another one. Anyway, you could fill your hulls with that. I should mention that when you capture one of the ships at sea, you can keep it. So you can have a ton of ships with you, you know, and you can sell ships to this guy too. It's the thing. You could also visit the governor of the area. The governor will sometimes he'll give you news. Sometimes he'll be like, listen, I know you've been, like, let's say you visit the French governor. He might be like, listen, I know you've been out there blowing up French boats. I can sell you a thing that will make us square. You know, and the French will forgive you.
Basically.
Yeah. You can also, there's other little trinkets they'll sell you, and occasionally you'll see their daughters around, and you can mingle around with them up to the point where you could actually, but a lot of times you get turned down, but eventually if you get powerful enough, you marry them, and then you're getting into the land game. You can get land that way too. Am I missing anything you can do in town?
You can recruit the guys, you can buy and sell goods, you can get information, you can swoon the girl.
I think that's mostly it.
Find treasure.
You could also, and when you go to a town, you can disband. You could like settle up with your men and just disband if you want to. That's something else. That's something else you can do. So the game, that is the bulk of the game. Now there are hidden subplots involving family members that have been kidnapped that you can go into that. I don't know if you saw any of those. So they don't always.
Yeah, I mean,
they don't always come up.
This is what we have talked about is the framework for a much, much deeper game.
Yeah.
There are.
This was pretty deep in 80.
Oh yeah.
87 or whatever. This would be a pretty deep game.
This is one of those things where, you've got the gameplay, right? But if you get good with that gameplay and you get comfortable with that gameplay, there's a whole nother game to play within that game. You know,
you can trade. You can play the alliance game.
Join forces with the countries and get paid off by them for going and screwing the other countries. Like you said, you can just buy and sell goods.
Yeah.
You could, if you wanted to.
If you know the trade routes and whatnot.
Yeah, if you wanted to, you could do no pirating at all.
That's right.
You could just get on your ship.
You'd be lame, super lame though.
And do goods back and forth and make tons and tons of money.
Yeah.
So it's a very not 1980s game.
Yeah, it gives you and
so far ahead of its time.
You could actually, if you pay attention to what's going on with the timeline and stuff, I mean, it is pivotal to a certain degree because you can tell who likes you and who hates you, and you can suck up to certain countries. Because just because you're an Englishman doesn't mean you have to do everything. You can go out and attack the English with everybody else. That's something else. As a pirate, I pretty much, whatever I saw, if it looked good, I'd go after it. And then the rest of it, and we should mention, you don't get killed in this game either. You get captured. And when you get captured, you spend X amount of time in the joint until one of your crew members or family members, they spring you, and then you can get back in the game if you're young enough. But eventually, you have to retire.
You age out, yeah.
And something, you can actually retire, and they'll be like, listen, you're still young. You can come back if you want. And then you say, nah. And so when you finally decide to call it a career, it takes all your crew, splits the money between them. You get a double portion because you're the captain. And then the guys with you will decide if they think that's a good deal or not. Usually they're pissed off. They want more. But sometimes you get lucky. And then you can, it gives you a ranking, like on a scale of what kind of pirate you are. There's a lot of eccentricities, like little tidbits we didn't go into too much. Like, for example, I would go out in high seas for a while, and like I got lost one time before I downloaded the map. And so my crew was getting mad because I was out of food almost. They would tell me, hey, you're running low, you're running low. So they give you plenty of opportunity. Something else, the crew gets testy if you take too long to attack crap.
Yeah.
They don't like it. And I think they can. Paid. I'm pretty sure they can mute. I never had it happen. But
yes, they definitely can.
The one time I attacked that town and ended up against the shore, it's because I was almost screwed. I was out of food and they were pissed off. I was like, I gotta attack something. This town. That was the time. But usually after that, I learned to manage my food a lot better because you had to keep a lot of food around. That was the big deal. But I mean, it's funny. I didn't play this when we played this in the Amigos. I didn't think it was all that great. But I had a lot more fun this time. I think maybe because I'm a better gamer than I was then. Maybe that's why I'm more patient. But I actually enjoyed this quite a bit. I thought the Atari version, I didn't think it looked as good as the Amiga version. I didn't think it played as fast, but otherwise, I mean, I thought it was a pretty darn fine version. I didn't have any problems with it.
Yeah, I can't speak on whether this is the definitive version or not.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of versions.
Well, there's Pirates Gold, and they made a CD32 version. It's supposed to be real nice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, they remade this thing multiple times.
And there are plenty of choices that you make that I don't know the significance of.
Yeah.
And that's okay. If this was my game, if I put down my $25 back in the day, and this
25 pounds,
yeah,
you'd be paying more than 25
bucks.
Yeah.
Back in the day, and this was my game to play for the next 6 months, there is plenty of game here to explore and enjoy.
Yeah. So just some accolades for Pirates. Just in the time this was released to the Atari, this had won the '88 Action Game of the Year from Computer Gaming World, the 1980 Origins Award for Best Screen Graphics, and the 1980 Origins Award for Best Fantasy Role-Playing Game. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
It sold a ton. It got remade a ton.
Even recently.
Yeah, and overall was over like gangbusters. So here's the funny thing. I looked at the reviews of this. I was interested to see, because one would assume this would get pretty good reviews. It's a pretty good game. Well, it got middling reviews. And I think I know why. Atari Mania, the website that I get a lot of information off of, the users on there have given us a 7.9 out of 10. That's a modern review. Reviews of the era, the ST Action gave it 88%, PowerPlay 87%, DOS Atari ST 82%, Tilt 80%, ASM 80%, ST Format 74%, and ST Action 66%. This was on the UK ST charts. It was at number 4 in 93, and it was on the charts 7 months between 93 and 94, so that's pretty good. But I think I understand why the reviews just weren't that great, and I think the reason is because by the time it got the Atari, it'd been out for a little while, and I think they expected a little more graphically. And I'm telling you, they're real sensitive about that in these magazines. And if you've been out for a couple years before it gets to you, it angers them. You know, and that's a thing. I've seen that over and over and over. So when you go back and look at these scores, you're like, man, this is better than a C game,
well,
or a B minus.
First of all, those scores weren't bad.
They weren't bad, but I mean, there was not. Would you not? I mean, we've played a lot of ST games. I mean, this is a top tier game in my mind.
I would say a lot of those scores came from Sid Meier wasn't out there writing checks.
Well, you always say that.
Well,
I'm not,
it's a proven thing.
Explain the Atari Mania 7.9 out of 10. That's a modern score. They couldn't even give it an 8. I was surprised. I was real surprised. And again, this coming out in the Atari ST in '89 and coming out on everything like other stuff at '87. They don't like it when they have stuff that's been out for a couple years. That makes the magazines mad. So well, yeah. But they should go pour it. That's not. Good grief.
Well, here's the thing. They got a version that wasn't any better than the Amiga version.
The Amiga version, it's worse than the Amiga version. The Amiga version didn't come out until '90, so they had more time.
Okay. Well,
it's the same basic bear, homie. It just looks a little more 18-bit than it does 16-bit to me. It's somewhere in the middle. It's like Atari Jaguar math. This is like 12-bit. You know what I mean? That's what it looks like to me. Could they have done a better job on the ST? Yes. Is this passable? Absolutely. Yeah. And the game, the meat of the game is still here, and that's what's important in this one. We did not get any user reviews on this one, the BRENT. I was actually kind of surprised. I thought somebody might dip their toe into the pool on this one. I did look it up on eBay, and this thing sold recently for $25, complete in box. I found a sealed copy. They're asking for $125. They're about to offer that's sealed. Then I saw another couple suckers that were fishing at $115 and even $300 dues. They were looking to get the big money, Brent, but they're not getting it. But overall, since you've not played Pirates before, this is one you've...
No, I have played Pirates before, just not on the ST.
Oh, so you give this the thumb?
Oh yeah, this is a good game.
Yeah, I enjoyed this way more than the Amiga version. For me,
this is something that you could go back and play today and still have fun with.
Absolutely. So that is the end of that chapter. thanks everybody for sticking with us on the Atari ST Show. We had a little sickness that kept us back a week, but we're back in the saddle. And we're retro reloaded for the next Atari ST Show. Brady, do you have any idea what we're going to be playing?
No.
Find out, shall we? Bam. It's another one. Goblins with multiple eyes. Goblins, as nominated by the Atari ST committee for us to give a whirl. I believe I tried this on the Amiga some time ago as well, and I found it interesting. Let's put it that way.
All right.
I think it might be more up your alley than it is mine, because you like this kind of stuff that makes you want to ram my head into the wall more than anybody else. So that'll be Goblins. We'll be back in action next month with Goblins at Atari ST Show. I want to mention that coming up next week on ARG Presents, we'll be looking at games on the mini-vid handheld system. And by system, I mean each one plays one game. This thing was hard to research and even harder to play. But by God, we will not let our listeners down.
Yes, we will.
Well, I'll try not to,
anyway.
And so we went ahead and gave it a whirl. We're the best we can on that one. And in just a few short weeks, Brent, we're going to be hitting a major milestone on ARG Presents. We'll have more about that on the ARG show next week. But again, next time out on the ST show, we'll be playing Goblins. Any final ST thoughts to Brent?
Nope.
We'll see you guys next time. And until then, make sure you play
your ST today.
Close enough.